Hi everyone, I'm Celeste.
And I'm Danielle, and we are the co-founder of the Somatica Institute of Sex and Relationship Coaching.
And the Somatica Institute was really created out of a space that we saw in the field around helping people in an experiential and practical way embrace their full selves in their erotic and intimate lives. And so we really want to help you all do that today and help you learn how to help people do that as well.
And with today's webinar, we're also launching our registration for the upcoming 2021 Somatica training. It is going to start on March 26th, and we will offer a special $200 off for everyone who is in this webinar and signs up today. We also really excited to share with you all kinds of our new certification package and other discounts and answer any questions you have about the training. So stay with us and we'll get to that later after our topic today.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how to be a ruthless de-shamifier. We're going to talk about shame and how you can recognize it in all of its different forms, whether you're doing it to yourself or doing it to other people or other people are doing it to you. And we're going to talk specifically about how we help people lower shame in Somatica, because we find that shame is not a helpful tool, not a tool at all when it comes to growth and transformation. Quite the contrary, that shame kind of causes us to shut down and freeze as opposed to being open to new growth.
And as you all saw, shame is something that is very, it's with us. No one can escape from shame. It's with us as part of our socialization and the way that we are brought up in every culture. I don't think there's a culture that skips shame. And I was even doing a little bit of shaming Rich at the beginning for not saying hello to me. And so, shame is everywhere. It's here as well.
And I was thinking just before this, kind of like, why shame, why people use shame, or why it's so like effective in causing people at least to change their external behaviors. Because, as humans, we really are social creatures and we depend on each other in order to survive. And what shame does is it says, like, if you keep doing that thing, you're not going to belong. You're going to be kicked out of the tribe. You're going to be thrown out. And so I think that's why it's used a lot for socialization. I don't think it needs to be used to socialize children, but it's effective in the sense that it causes people to stop doing external behaviors because they're afraid that they're going to be kicked out of the community or shunned, and that actually touches us on a survival level, which is also why I think shame can be so hard to deal with, and why people even have shame about shame, is because it gets us at our core. So you can see, children shamed all the time as they're growing up. Instead of somebody saying like, hey, we made a little mess here, let's clean it up together and I'll show you how. They might say, wow, you're a really messy kid. What were you, raised by wolves? Nobody taught you how to do anything. There can be more of this negative attitude of labeling, or, to try to stop a behavior or change a behavior or create a behavior.
And I love it, Celeste, that you gave an example of how it can be different, because I think if we have so much shame around us that sometimes we can't even think about so how do we tell someone to stop a behavior, or how do we tell someone to do something different without shaming them? And it was a beautiful example to do that.
I kind of want to give one other example, if that's okay, just because I think, a lot of times, like, let's say you're a parent and you're like, you want to be able to give your kids everything, but you feel you don't have a lot of money and you feel guilty about it. So instead of saying, hey, when your kid wants to buy a new toy, instead of saying, hey, we don't have really enough money for that, I wish I could get it for you, they say, stop being so selfish. Why do you ask for things all the time? Because they don't want to feel that feeling of like guilt or inadequacy come up. So I think, shame happens in these interpersonal contexts for so many different reasons. And so, we have to be gentle on ourselves and each other about why we might use shame, but also to see if we can start shifting that behavior. And obviously, shame comes in many forms, including around sexuality. Religion has a lot of shaming in it, like, God, for some reason, in some religions, we think God doesn't want people to masturbate. Never understood that, but okay. so, so all of these
There is
messages.
abundance of semen after all,
Yeah.
It's not like there's a, it's not gonna go away somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, not to mention, girls don't have to worry about that at all. So, but definitely we can get these messages from parents, from teachers, from community, from, parents of our friends, from church, and all of these messages cause us to kind of start to stop our full sense of self-expression and definitely impede experiences of emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy.
So as you imagine, we do have lots of people coming to our offices, experiencing shame and having shame, like in the background. And you want to assume that people around you have shame. It's not like someone doesn't have some areas in their lives that they have shame or experience shame around, because it is so prevalent. People feel ashamed about their bodies. They feel ashamed about their sexuality. They feel ashamed about the fantasies. They feel ashamed about like the attachment styles. There are lots of books out there that are going to tell you how you're fucked up if you're an avoidant or anxiously attached. So there's lots of opportunities to feel ashamed. People are going to feel ashamed about their needs, about their feelings, about how much they can do or cannot do things, and also about how they're able or not able to keep their boundaries or know their boundaries. And anything you can imagine, people are going to feel ashamed about.
And I think it's good to be able to recognize like the cues of shame, right? Like the verbal cues and the physical cues of shame. That really helps, because then we can see like with our partners or our friends, if we say something and we see that they're taking it in as shame, or if they say something to us, or our clients, obviously, or if they say something to us, and we realize that they're actually shaming themselves in that process. And so it's good to be able to see, like, I know a lot of times when people say something that they're ashamed of, they won't look at the person across from them. They won't look at me. They don't want to see the other person's negative reaction to the thing about themselves that they think is horrible and disgusting and unacceptable or inappropriate, or whatever it is that this belief that they have about themselves, that something is like very wrong with them. So, people might say things like, I can't believe how stupid I was to trust them. I should have known better. Or I'm so pathetic. I fall in love way too easily. These are just things that we hear people say in our office, right? Like, I'm so fat. No one will want to have sex with me. Just like this sort of like these negative self messages that say like, there's something wrong with me and I'm bad, and a self scolding that actually makes it really hard for them to be able to look at that thing with gentleness and curiosity and see what's actually going on, or really just, let go of old negative messages that don't really exist.
Yeah, and just to help you recognize how shame feels in your body when you experience it, it many times feel like you want to vanish and disappear. You're probably going to feel very clenched down. You would not want to keep any eye contact, and you might feel really a feeling of constriction, as if you want to kind of bundle in and disappear and not be seen. It's also super isolating to experience shame. So part of the steps that we're going to talk about is like how we as practitioners connect with it. But it is very isolating and embarrassing to look in someone else's eyes when you experience shame.
And I think, we gave kind of examples of what it's like when people self-shame, but also it happens in partnership all the time. People are different, and some of those differences are really neutral and don't cause any negative impact on the other person. But when something that a person in a relation, when one person in a relationship doesn't like something that the other person is doing because it makes them feel uncomfortable or scared or hurt or angry, instead of sharing vulnerably about those feelings, they might be more likely to do very like subtle or overt shaming. And a lot of times these shamings that people do to each other kind of insinuate things about the other person. Like, it's like saying like, you're too much, or you're damaged, or you're bad or evil, or no one will love you. So I think it's really important. I want to say some sentences that I see couples say to each other that are shaming sentences, just so you can start to recognize how people, try to stop the other person from something that they don't like by shaming them. Like, you're such a drama queen. Do you have to cry every time we have a conversation? Maybe underlying, they're feeling guilty when their partner cries, or they are uncomfortable with emotions. But instead of saying that, they say, why are you crying all the time? And this is kind of like a "you're too much" message. Or what kind of person sleeps until noon? Like, who does that? That's like you're like damaged or you're spoiled. Instead of saying, "Oh, I miss our morning time together," like instead of sharing what is hurting or upsetting about the fact that your partner might have a different sleep schedule than you start to try to shame them out of it. Or "I can't believe you watch porn. It's so degrading and objectifying." This is one of those messages where somebody's saying like you're bad or evil.
Or open relationship doesn't work. So good luck with wanting to be poly. It's another way that people kind of, no one try to tell you not do something that they are scared of, or they feel they heard it's bad. So they're like, oh, no one's gonna love you, or you will never find the lasting love and romance that we're all promised. So don't dare to try to do something else. So even open relationship doesn't work. So that means that there's no way it's going to work for you. There's also like this threat that comes with it.
Yeah, I think a lot of times shame comes with some sort of a threat of like, if you keep doing that horrible thing, horrible things are going to happen to you, or you're bad, no one will love you, you're disgusting, you're going to be cast out, right? Like that's the whole bottom line of shame. And those kinds of, we have found that those kinds, well, interpersonally in relationship, of course, we've found that when people shame each other like that, it lowers intimacy, it lowers trust in the relationship, it makes people want to hide things that they do, or hide themselves, or just disconnect because they don't want to be hurt in that way. And we've also found more like on a macro level that shame doesn't lead to positive growth and change, right? If we like beat each other up about, like, if we beat ourselves up, oh, I look so awful, I'm gonna, I need to exercise more, what's wrong with me? I'm like, I think like when I say those kinds of messages to myself, all I want to do is like eat and lay on the couch because I'm beating myself up. And when you beat yourself up, you don't feel like you want to, go out and take care of yourself. You feel like you're not worth those kinds of things. So shame really like lowers our sense of worth and kind of.
Many times it actually creates more of like addictive patterns and like going into hiding. So we see a lot when people feel ashamed about watching porn, for example, they will try to stop it, but then porn will become this like very intense experience, instead of like being like, oh, sometimes I want to watch porn and that's normal. Many people want to get excited in that way. They will start to hide while they watch it. They will develop excessive watching, and like shaming ourselves about shame, and about who we are many times leads to hiding and addictive patterns.
In Somatica, we really like, our whole goal is to help people fully embrace who they are and be able to express that and share it and feel their full sense of self-expression and joy and celebration in who they are. And so in order to do that, we really have to help people lower shame, because shame completely gets in the way of being able to embrace who you are and what you really want. And so if we want to help people grow and change, we have to create a space where they feel safe enough to take the risks of intimacy, right? The risk of like asking for what you want. But if you feel like, oh, I shouldn't have all of these needs, there's something wrong with my needs, they're horrible, like nobody's going to be able to meet them, then we're not likely to ask for what we want. And we also can't really deal with the disappointment if somebody can't give us what we want, right? So, we want to transform the shame into empowerment around needs or boundaries, and help people have more intimacy and more connection by lowering shame, which causes people to, hide themselves and stay away from intimacy.
I think what's really great about the Somatica training around that is that you get to see other people having, we talk and cover shame a lot. I just jumped ahead a little bit, but I can't help it because it's amazing to see how people that really have this experience of normalization and de-shamifying in the training, because they're hanging out with so many other people that also have shame about their stuff. And because we talk about shame so openly in the training and we de-shamify ruthlessly, it helps people really reduce shame and feel normal about who they are and what they desire and who they are in their attachment patterns and what they want and what they're longing for. So that kind of level of normalization happens so well in a group setting. It's phenomenal to watch it.
It is. You can just see the layers of shame peeling away and like the, oh my God, you mean it's okay to be who I am? You mean it's okay that sometimes I cross my own boundaries because I'm scared? You mean it's okay that I get anxious or avoidant in relationship? It's just like, okay, so this is who I am, as opposed to like everything I am is bad. And then once you say, okay, this is who I am, then you might say, oh, well, how can I expand on tools so that I can do things, that are even more conducive to intimacy? It's like, I'm good enough now and I can get better, as opposed to like, I'm a horrible wreck now and maybe I'll never get better. It's a very different attitude. I'm good enough now and I can continue to get better. And that's really the attitude that we try to bring in Somatica. And we work with lowering shame in many different ways. We work through attachment, joining, celebration, normalizing protective mechanisms. So we want to, and also kind of shaking our fist at the world for being so shaming. So we want to kind of go through each one of those and talk about them separately, so you can see, how can I bring ruthless de-shamifying as an attitude and approach to life into all of my day-to-day interactions, so that I'm a, anti-shame warrior.
And how we want to encourage you and inspire you to be, because I do think that the way that we relate to shame in Somatica is very, like goes beyond the bound of the shamifying. It really is quite ruthless. So we want you to share those tools with you so you can do it in your life towards yourself and towards others as well, with kindness and gentleness, because shame does not vanish overnight and with one experience. It takes some time, a good amount of time, to peel layers of it.
And maybe before we go into them, I do like this question from Sylvie. I hear people call other people or other people's behavior toxic all the time. It's become so prevalent to say about people. And I find the word so shaming and also so non-specific that it's really hard to de-shamify the fallout from that advice. I agree. Those kinds of labels, I don't think that they help anyone, because if we're doing something that's shaming to ourselves or others, or if we're doing something out in the world that's maybe feels like it's harmful to ourselves or others, what people might call toxic. If we just label it toxic, that's a way to say, like, it's kind of a shunning, right? It's like, let's get rid of that person. Let's get rid of that behavior. And it doesn't bring any curiosity or non-judgment to go, I wonder why that person is doing that. What are they protecting in themselves? Because usually when people do behavior that's anti-intimacy, it's because they've been hurt in intimacy in some way. And if we just label it as toxic, we can't love that person and sort of see, like, why are they doing something that's maybe hurting themselves or hurting other people? And how can we help them see it in a gentle way and become empowered to do something else? Labeling it and shaming it never does that. And neither does shunning someone, just sends them out into other parts of the world to keep doing the same thing. So we don't do that in Somatica. We say, hey, let's talk about how this thing that you're doing is impacting you and other people, and let's see where it comes from, and let's have some compassion for it, so that we can start to shift. So I think the first way that we work in Somatica around shame is to start out with a feeling of this unconditional, loving, safe space where, like, literally client can say anything to me, and believe me, I've had them say almost everything to me that you can imagine. And I am not going to shun and shame and judge them. I'm going to be curious. I'm going to be loving. I'm going to try to understand where it comes from inside of them and what's going on, and create a safe feeling of like, hey, I'm not going to punish you. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to send you away, not leaving. Whatever you tell me, we're just going to be here with it, and we're going to understand it, and we're going to work through it together. So that's like the first way we work, with a sense of, as secure attachment as is possible, right? We're all human, but we bring that attitude of loving acceptance, non-judgment, empathy, and curiosity to whatever our clients are bringing us, if they're ashamed about it.
Another tool that we are bringing is called joining, and what we mean by that is really joining the person and reassuring them that a lot of people do the same thing that they're doing, but I think it is mostly effective if we can come out and talk about us doing something similar that they are doing. That's always much more effective than talking generally about other people. And then, like, and we say sometimes like, I know, I totally, like, I totally shame other people too, or I totally take revenge when or want to crush someone when they hurt me or I feel humiliated. So sharing those things about ourselves really help the client feels, or your friend or your child or your spouse, to feel really connected to and loved and joined with.
Yeah, one of them that I love to do is I like to say I'm needy, because people are so like embarrassed about their needs. And I feel like I'm somebody who has so many needs. And when I tried to press them down and shame myself about them early on in my life, they kind of ran my life and I was angry and hurt and confused. And then I was like, oh my God, I have so many needs. I am so needy. Let me see if I can really own these needs and see how many of them I can get met out in the world without pressuring people or guilting people or manipulating people into giving them to me. But how can I just like really be honest and embrace how much need I have, and then also be able to deal with the disappointment of not having it. But the first step is just to say, yeah, I'm needy. And me and my clients will be like, I'm needy, and then that really helps
Super,
lower the shame around it. We announce.
super helpful when you acknowledge that, like, me, I'm like a queen. I have a lot of needs. And, like when you start acknowledging who you are and what you need, it really helps you start to also find solutions in the world instead of trying to sit on your hands and squeeze, I'm needy, I'm shaming myself about that. Then you just feel bad about yourself. But if you start acknowledging that you have needs, or, I am needy and I have lots of needs and want them all fulfilled, you can even become creative about that. Not only come out of shame, but really start to find solutions that are effective and helpful. And as Celeste said, sometimes also experience the disappointment of people not being able to meet your needs.
Yeah, and I think when we come out as those things, firstly, it's not usually what practitioners do. And people will say, wait, you do that? You smash people when you're hurt? And it's like, yeah, I do. I'm human. We're all human. And bringing in that attitude of we're all human really helps to lower shame. And that's kind of the joining approach. The other thing that we do is kind of like shake our fist at the lame culture outside that says you have to be a perfect parent and you have to be a perfect partner and you have to be a perfect worker and you have to be perfect. You have to be the exact weight that the people are in the magazines and you have to come in a certain position and without any toys, whatever it is that society is saying that like is the right way to be or the normal way to be. And that puts tremendous pressure on us to have this template that we're always comparing ourselves to and coming up short. And so we definitely, one of our tools is to shake our fist at society's pretense of perfectionism and the pressure and the shame that creates. So that can really be helpful to say, God, I wish they would stop making people feel like they have to be a perfect parent. Like there's no harder job in the world than being a parent. There is not a single person who can do it perfectly. So let's get over that and just like see what's happening here.
It's also super important to see and really like scan for when people are using those like self-shaming behavior, self-shaming talk. I used to do a lot of it. I'm doing much less of it thanks to Somatica and hanging out with this method and teaching it. I'm also learning and growing myself. So hearing people talk in that way to themselves, and the way it's mostly like the energy. Sometimes you can say the same sentence in different kinds of energy, and it will feel completely different. For example, I'm so codependent, as opposed to, I'm codependent, like, so it's a little bit like the energy of saying it, because it's like the energy of saying I'm needy, right? I'm so needy, as opposed to, yeah, I'm needy. It's very different energy. So you kind of track the energy as well as the way that people kind of put themselves down around having needs, desires, boundaries, etc.
And one thing I think people put themselves down about, and this is a little bit more complex, but I think it's just important to look at, is that we all, because of the ways that we didn't have perfect childhoods or upbringings, and this isn't just about parents, just about society in general and all of the different places that we get messages or all the things that happen to us as young people with our peers, is that in different ways we get hurt when we're younger, and we develop certain protective mechanisms against those hurts, and they stick around as habits. And a lot of people feel a lot of shame about those protective mechanisms. So an example of a protective mechanism that you have no control over and that's automatic and that results from some young experience or trauma experience is dissociation. And I definitely have clients who are like, oh, I'm so dissociated, like I can't stay in my body, or they feel really embarrassed. Like when something bad is happening to me, I just freeze and I can't do anything about it. And it's like, I want to de-shamify that protective mechanism and say, like, in order to survive, you had to develop that protective mechanism. So we want to, celebrate it and thank it for the hard work it's done to help you survive. And yeah, maybe now the fact that it's sticking around isn't helpful to intimacy, but you wouldn't have made it here without it. So that's a way that we really de-shamify those kinds of protective mechanisms. And there's like a lot of good examples of those. Like I know for me, one of my protective mechanisms that I used a lot in my young life was like I was so scared of being left that I would break up with someone before they would break up with me, or like even if I had a need and I didn't want to say the need because I thought, oh, they're gonna think I'm so needy and break up with me, that I would break up with them and then say the need, which wasn't very conducive to intimacy because it really negatively impacted the attachment processes that we were developing with each other. But that was an automatic habitual response to my abandonment trauma that, before I was able to understand it, I had no control over. And so I needed to do, the work of de-shamifying that and then looking at it and seeing what I could do differently in those moments. So there's all of these ways that people shame their protective mechanisms. Like, I don't know why I need so much space. Like, am I like, like I'm just a loner, like, sort of like, but saying again, like Danielle said, in that negative voice, and beating yourself up about it instead of going, well, maybe when you're alone, that was the only time that you felt safe enough to just be yourself. And so, or maybe when someone else is in the room, you can't even track your own feelings, and because you're so busy tracking someone else. So it feels really good to get a break and to be by yourself. And that's totally understandable. Maybe we can work on some tools so you can track yourself when someone else is in the room, but let's not shame you for having that protective mechanism, because it literally helped you survive to go take some time for yourself so that you can disconnect from having to take care of everyone else, for example.
Oh, just love that you said that, because that's definitely, like I'm not a loner, but I cannot feel my feelings when other people are around. I need I was like, damn, why I feel like so crowded? Because I grew up with a lot of, like insertion of anxiety, anxious energy from my mom. And it was always like taking over my own. So like this feeling of like, oh, something's wrong with me because I can't find my words when someone else is upset or having lots of feelings. And I just like, like suffocate there. So yeah, I do. And then like learning helped me a lot when I'm like notice this pattern and starting to like really be gentle to myself, because there's also like a panic component there, right? So gentle to myself around it and not shaming myself, and I'm like, yeah, like, and breathe and learn, develop mechanisms to be able to find my words, sometimes 10 minutes later, but eventually remember that I have words and I can find them. So thank you so much for joining us. We deeply enjoyed having you here and sharing with you about de-shamifying. We can't wait to see more of you in the training, in webinars, in intros, everywhere. We would love to see more of you. Hopefully one day we'll see you in person as well, as the vaccine is coming along. And for now, we would love, if you really enjoyed it, we would love for you to like us on Facebook and also subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, our YouTube channel is Celeste and Danielle, and wonderful questions. Thank you so much for all of that. We will see you soon.